Hey guys, Buildzoid here, and these memory kits, these super high frequency memory kits, they just keep multiplying. We keep getting more and more releases about how G.skill now has the world's fastest memory, and then before this, it was still G.skill, because Corsair is basically playing catch up with G.skill. But yeah, Corsair were also like, oh yeah, we got some seriously fast RAM as well. So, and Team Group actually makes a 4500 megahertz kit as well at this point. So basically, we keep seeing these super high speed memory kits coming out, and there's a problem with these. Okay, there's a very big problem with these. Actually, there's lots of problems with these. This statement right here is just false. Okay, that's not true at all. Designed for high stability, that has proven itself through stress testing on one motherboard with a 8700K. The problem is they're not mentioning how many 8700Ks they had to bin before they found one that ran this memory speed. Because, I can guarantee there is a few 8700Ks that won't post this no matter how hard you try. There's probably quite a few 8600Ks that won't post this no matter how hard you try. If you drop all the way down to like an i3 8350K, well, things might really suck because at least the previous, like the 7350K, just kind of sucked in terms of memory overclocking, like really badly actually, compared to like a 7700K. But you know, it is possible that the A350K, being a quad core, has a better memory controller this time around instead of the garbage they put on the 7350K. But even then, you're going to need to bin CPUs for this kind of memory in many cases because this is just way too high. The Coffee Lake memory controller hasn't improved this much compared to KB Lake. It really hasn't. It's actually, from what I've heard, because I've not seen a Coffee Lake in person yet, from what I've heard, it's basically the same memory controller as KB Lake with more memory multipliers. And some of them don't work. So, yeah. Well, some of them don't work on the CPUs that can't run the frequencies that high. So, that's not particularly great. So yeah, it's just like it works on one motherboard. So for this 4700 megahertz kit, you need this motherboard. There's no other motherboard that'll run it, apparently. Which, that right off the bat, I mean, do you really want to buy this motherboard just because you want to run this memory kit? That seems like a terrible idea. Right? That's just no. That's dumb. That's just straight up dumb. Though it does make me wonder if this motherboard isn't really good at high max frequency. That could be worth investigating because G.skill hasn't even managed to apparently get this working on an Apex, which I would have thought would be the motherboard of choice for this, but I guess Asus didn't really bother to fine tune the Apex for super high memory speed stability for daily usage or something. Or maybe the Apex tries to set memory timings that are a tad too aggressive while the MSI board just slaps on the worst memory timings possible. Honestly, not sure. That would actually require testing, but nonetheless, a memory kit that works on one motherboard is a problem. A memory kit that is at such high frequency that it probably won't work on most 8700Ks, that is a problem. And you know what? This kit is 4700, but that kind of trend follows into kits like this 4600, which works on one motherboard. And this memory kit, which works on one family of really awful CPUs. Really awful for the casual user. They're actually, like, for extreme overclockers, the KB Lake X chips are actually really interesting. And incidentally, this X299 OCF compatibility is again with only KB Lake X. They're just not mentioning it for whatever reason. 4500 kit. Oh, look, that's another X299 OCF and KB Lake X implied. Yeah, that's a great product right there. Most people like it. Basically, don't buy these kits. Just don't, because you probably don't have a motherboard that these work on. And if you do have the motherboard that they work on, you probably don't have the CPU that they work with. So don't buy them because they probably won't work. So, and the worst part is you're going to be paying through the nose for these kits, right? That's 370 quid, that's 470 quid, that's 534. Like, you're paying almost as much as a mid-range graphics card at this due to mining currently, but like like you're paying more for RAM than your GPU at this point. Like, that's just silly. Don't do that. That's just dumb. And the worst part is you're paying for memory kits that probably won't even work, which is just like, and you won't be able to get them past RMA because there's so many excuses. You don't have the right motherboard. Your CPU is not binned enough to run our memory kit. Our memory kit is fine. It's your CPU that's a problem. Go buy 10 of them and tell us how it runs then. That's just like, on the bright side, I think many people won't be buying these because these memory kits are so expensive, though I have heard of at least what, like, I've already had experience with one person considering buying these things for a 7700K of all things, right? Not for Z370, not for X299, no, he wanted to run one of these memory kits on a 7700K. They're not compatible with 7700Ks, like, at all. Any of them. Like, the 7700K doesn't even have memory ratios going past 4133. Technically speaking, there is a 4266 memory ratio in the BIOS, but good luck getting that to work. I've never seen it post. And I do have a memory kit that goes all the way to like 4800 megahertz, with multiple hours of grinding memory speed. Not, actually, like, not drop in and run 4800. It's just like lots and lots of fiddling with BIOS settings to get it to that point, but it did do 4800 plus, and that memory kit won't post 4266 on Z270 because I think that ratio is just straight up broken. As in, it's there as a setting, but it's not actually implemented in the sense that the CPU would actually be able to post it, because it doesn't seem to do that ever. So yeah, somebody considered one of these for a 7700K, which was just a terrible idea. And the reason was actually really simple. They had a 7700K doing 5.1 gigahertz, and they wanted more CPU performance. Now, the reasons as to why they wanted more CPU performance were actually wrong, but they wanted more CPU performance, so their idea was, okay, we'll just slap some more high-speed memory on it. Well, this stuff wouldn't work in the first place. Like, it wouldn't work even if you had an 8700K or a KB Lake X, unless you binned a few of them. With all probability, binned a few of them. I'm not sure if Intel actually bins the 7740X's better. If they do, then you might actually have pretty good success with X299 OC formula and a 7740X and one of these memory kits. But that is a stupid waste of money if ever I saw one, especially if all you want to do is play games. And like the goal isn't some extreme overclocking. And another side note with these memory kits is they might not actually improve your performance as much as you'd like them to, because memory kits rated for frequencies this high basically cause two other issues. When you do put them onto a motherboard that is compatible and with a CPU that can run them. The first thing, a lot of memory kits rated over 3866 do, which is just like, that is a general problem. Anything rated over 3866 on a lot of motherboards will cause the motherboard to set the VCCSA and the VCCIO voltages to unsafely high levels, like 1.35 volts and 1.4, or 1.4 and 1.4, or in some cases over 1.4. And 1.4 volts system agent over an extended period of time is very likely to cause damage to your memory controller and the system agent in general. This could lead to things like PCIe lanes not working because they're part of the system agent and you just shoved a bunch of extra voltage into them. The memory controller not working anymore. It might just happen that, you're running your 4500 megahertz kit and you're running it for a year, and then after that year, you just start getting a ton of blue screens that are related to memory errors. Why? Your memory controller is falling apart. It's no longer capable of running this memory speed because it was run at too high voltage for too long. And these kinds of memory kits, like, they're gonna, like, I don't think there's any motherboards that would actually dial the voltage in properly for these memory kits. And that's assuming there's any CPUs that would actually run these memory kits at low VCCIO and low VCCSA. which I have my doubts about because like the best way to get high frequency working on well, any CPU really is to pump a bunch of voltage into the memory controller. And I'm not sure, it might be like 1 in 100 CPUs where you can do 4500 megahertz at a reasonable system agent voltage. I'm sure there's a lot of them that'll do it at unreasonable voltages, but if you want reasonable voltages, speeds like this are probably not going to work on the majority of chips. And that's a problem. That's like a pretty major that's a pretty major problem. And then there are some CPUs which will just not do these speeds at all. For example, Gamer's Nexus got sent this 4600 megahertz kit, and well, basically me and Steve ended up on a Skype call trying to get it to post anything like, trying to get it to post high memory speeds. And it ended up really badly. So we set very high VCCSA, very high VCCIO. We ended up with, we actually set the TRFC really, really high. We had this motherboard, and we ended up at 4450 megahertz, because at 4500 it still wouldn't post. And at 4450 megahertz, it was completely unstable, as in you could get into Windows, you could run a few benchmarks here and there, but good luck passing a memory stress test, or actually having the system run for more than an hour, because it would crash a lot, because it was unstable, even with everything we did. And we actually ended up like loosening out a bunch of subtimings in a desperate attempt to get the memory more stable. Well, the memory to actually post those higher frequency settings. So basically, the problem with these, so you basically have problems of these things aren't compatible with many motherboards. These things probably won't work on a lot of CPUs. They probably won't work on many CPUs. They'll work on even fewer CPUs if you actually try to run them at safe voltages for the CPU. And if you do get these memory kits, oftentimes, like, I imagine a lot of the motherboards, the way that they get these super high frequencies working is not by setting optimized memory settings. It's by setting the loosest garbage they can find in a desperate attempt to make these settings work. Because you know how you can make a high frequency more stable? By doing less work, right? If you actually functionally pull less data in and out of the memory, it'll look more stable, because there's less chances of you screwing up something. Which is just like, that's a terrible, like, awful. Just an awful way of dealing with this. Because these speeds are unreasonable. They're really, really unreasonable. They're cool marketing stunts. And I think for extreme overclockers, these kits could be very interesting to play with. They could turn out extremely good for like maximum frequency attempts. They might even be really good for something like 4133 CL12 or 4200 CL12 even. But they're probably only good for maximum frequency. And I'm basing that off of the fact that it is actually possible to optimize to optimize memory PCBs for frequency over timings. So there are quite a few memory kits out there which will do absolutely amazing in terms of max memory clock, but they will fall flat on their face if you try to do, well, anything aggressive around 4000 megahertz. They just won't do it. They'll get stuck at like CL13. They have motherboard compatibility issues at, when trying to, well, it's not really motherboard compatibility. It's just they won't work on a lot of motherboards if you try to do a combination of something like 4000 megahertz at CL12. It just won't work. But they will do 5 gigahertz just fine, because that's what the sticks are dialed in for. And a lot of these super high frequency kits are quite possibly going to exhibit the same kind of issues. Because of how they're designed and what they're optimized to do. And that's, so for extreme overclockers, these could be kind of interesting to mess around with. But for the daily user, just don't even like consider touching these with a 10-foot pole. Like, seriously, it's not worth it. They cost too much. They're probably not going to give you any performance benefit. And that's assuming you can get them to work. Which, like, is a whole, like, yeah, that's the main issue, right? These probably won't work. If they do work, they won't help you. Actually, probably won't work. If they do work, they might destroy your... If they do work, they might degrade your CPU. And if they do work, they also might not improve your performance. So basically, these are a terrible idea for the average consumer. And I think, honestly, the people, like, I think the only saving grace for these kits is that they're so expensive that many people won't even want to buy them on the basis of price alone. And then there's the crazy people who, they're at the limit of their CPU. So, they're pushing a 7700K or an 8700K or even a 7980XE, and they're pushing like some of these CPUs to the absolute limit frequency wise, and they still want more CPU power. And when you run out of core clock and uncore, well, the next thing you can do is more memory speed. But these kits are not the answer for more memory performance. Quite frankly, I think if you want more memory performance, the best thing you can do is to learn how to overclock your memory properly and then dial in all the subtimings, because you can get a lot of kits that, from, say, G.skill, that, wait, I actually have the product list somewhere here. Like, well, here's a side note. This is a 4266 kit. It's not, like, even this isn't validated for all that many motherboards. And this is only 4266. It's not even close to the speeds of some of those other kits, and this is still only approved for 3 motherboards. And actually, that's the same kit. This is a 4400, 3 motherboards. This is a 4500, 1 motherboard. 4600, 1 motherboard. So, very few motherboards are compatible. But if you go for something like a, okay, not RGB kits, but I heard G.skill was supposed to launch like some super low latency kits. Oh, this looks decent. Oh wait, no, that's huge. But honestly, you should be better off if you buy a kit there, like this. Because this is rated, it's rated at really low timings. Low voltage as well, so if you pump more voltage into it, these should go significantly lower. And it's actually QVL'd for still... Oh no, it's doing 4 motherboards. Great. So that's progress right there, but you get the idea. Basically, buy a kit that's rated at a more reasonable speed at low timings and learn to overclock it, because you can probably if you dial in one of these memory kits, you can completely steamroll one of these high frequency kits. In fact, these high frequency kits probably set the subtimings so loose that this kit right here would probably beat them stock. And yeah, I'd love to test that, but with the prices of even something like this, and then the prices of something like that, that's probably not going to happen. So that kind of sucks. But basically, if you want memory performance, just learn to optimize your memory yourself, because the way the motherboard set up the auto settings is awful. And the reason for that is really simple. The motherboard's main goal with setting up your memory is to make it post. It's not to give you good performance, because if it doesn't post, that causes problems, right? If you have a user who doesn't know how to set up their memory properly, and their motherboard stops posting, then that causes a panic attack, because a lot of people don't even realize that, you can like reset the BIOS. Like a lot of new people to overclocking, they see a blue screen and they're like, oh my god, my computer died. Or the screen goes black and the first reaction is computer's dead. Or the board refuses to post and their first reaction is computer's dead. And so when motherboard manufacturers set up the way configure the auto timing system, I don't know how it's actually done, but the auto timings, the way they're set up, and what you end up with when you just leave everything auto is awful. Like really bad for performance, because it's optimized to guarantee stability for the lowest common denominator of memory stick, which is really bad in some cases. So you end up with subtimings that are trash, and they get trashier the higher the frequency is. And the nice thing is, these lower frequencies, when you tighten the timings, they are not actually as hard to do on the memory controller. So you don't need to push up the voltage as much as if you're just pushing raw frequency. Because a lot of the time, just like frequency is hard, period. Okay? High frequency on its own is a problem. And then you end up with loose timings and very high frequency, and it's still a problem. And then if you compare that to just lower frequency and aggressive timings, you can actually get away with a lot lower voltages than if you're just going raw frequency, because it puts so much less strain on the memory controller. So, like, if you want memory performance, learn to time your RAM, buy something reasonable, and then manually configure it. You'll get way more performance out of that than buying a memory kit, which is basically built for, like, these are basically memory kits built around the idea of, like, if you had a car engine, that it just has really high RPM. That's pretty much what these are. Very, very high RPM engines. They don't actually put out a lot of power. It's just very high RPM. Because the thing is, your memory frequency is not a measure of performance. Your memory frequency, it's just a clock at which the RAM runs. And then all the operations in the RAM happen based on the timings. And if the timings suck, you can actually end up with less performance at a higher clock than at a lower clock with better timings, because your if your latencies are really bad, right? There's a limit. There's an amount. Like, if you spend a ton of time waiting to access data on the memory, it doesn't matter how quickly you can get the data out of the memory once it's accessed, because you're spending so much time waiting to access it that ultimately there's a memory kit that's going to beat you on actual transfer rate, right? Which is why, like, the frequency is not a performance measurement. Frequency and timings are. RAM is complex. Deal with it. Anyway, that's it for the video. It's ending up very, very long. But I hope I've driven the point home and probably beaten it to death at this point. Don't buy super high-speed memory kits. And learn to overclock your RAM. Oh, this looks really sweet. 4017. What's this qualify? Oh. Oh, well. I should have expected that. But this looks like a really cool memory kit. Because that is... What's the spec on this? Oh, and it's still really low voltage. That's awesome. I just turned into a G.skill advert. Anyway. I hope they send me memory now. Because they don't. But, yeah, anyway. That's it for the video. Thank you for watching. Sorry for wasting your time if you think that I beat the freaking point... past the point of being beaten to death. Yeah, like, share, subscribe, or dislike if you really think this was way too damn long. And if you have any comments or critique on how this could have been better, you can leave it down in the comments section. Isn't that great? I've mentioned subscribe. If you'd like to support what I do here with actually hardcore overclocking, I have a PayPal, a Patreon, and you can also buy shirts, and all of those help out immensely. There's a link to all of them down in the description below. There's also a link with that link. Under that link, there's also a link to well, I'm planning on offloading a whole bunch of hardware again. So if you want to pick up some hardware for cheap, you should check out the AHOC Junkyard. It's along with the shirts and PayPal and Patreon. So yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.